welcome to Women Living Intentionally. My name is Renee, and
I'm Tish.
And we will be hosting this evening's discussion around effectively navigating the journey of co-parenting. Joining us tonight, we have Aletha Fernandez. We have Mikhail Dickerson, who will be our two panelists. And we also have our licensed professional, Dr. Mike Evans, joining us as well to help us with any insight.
Well, just one minor correction. I'm not a doctor, but I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
Sorry about, thank you.
Maybe that means that you're on your way to your doctor.
Right, exactly.
All right, let's speak that into existence. Absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to start off just to get Aletha and Mikhail to tell us a little bit about yourselves, to include, your child or your children, just a little bit of background about each one of you.
Ladies
we can start with Mikhail. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So yes, Mikhail Dickerson. I live here in the DC area. I'm a father of one. His name is Carter. He's 4 years old. He'll be 5 in April. He is my pride and joy. He's my motivation. He's everything that he's why I exist. So just being the best father I can be to him it is purely my everyday goal. So I'm glad to share my experience as a father.
Thank you, Mikhail.
Thanks.
All right, and I am Aletha. I've been blessed with 5 beautiful children in a marriage. The oldest is 23, then I have 19, 16, and twin boys that are 14. So they're my last crew. So I'm glad I got boys. But I don't know. I've been married for 23 years and got a divorce, and that has been a great challenge. Besides that, I'm a parent to plenty of children at school, and just navigating this world of life and transitional changes in relationships that sometimes we don't have all answers for, but we learn as we go,
Absolutely.
So I'm happy to be here and share my experience.
Well, we thank you all again for being here and taking the time out to discuss this hot topic with us, especially now given the current pandemic situation. I'm just trying to see how you all are handling co-parenting and COVID, things of that nature. So just looking forward to having this great discussion with you guys, and hopefully, maybe shedding some light on some challenges or anything that you all may be facing that can help somebody else in the future as well too. So we really appreciate you joining us this evening.
You're welcome.
I'm going to turn it over to Tish. So she will start us off with questions, and then we'll just go from there.
Well, again, thank you both for being here, and we are excited about what you have to share with not only us, but also people that may be able to benefit from your stories. And certainly it's not just a story. Mikhail mentioned that his son is his pride and joy. And of course, Aletha, you mentioned that you have 5 beautiful children. So if I can just start with you, Aletha, certainly you've mentioned that you've been married for over, or at least 23 years, and now you're in a situation where you are co-parenting. So can you tell us what that has been like for you since you have been in a co-parenting situation as a single woman?
Well, it has been a challenge, a really big challenge, because you're trying to consider everyone's feelings and everyone's emotions, plus keep the children as the center. Like, it's about the children, and not about our thing that we're going through. So it has been a challenge, but I've learned so much through the process. So like I said, we were married on paper for 23 years. But during that time, you have to go from separation, then you got to go from the waiting, then you have to go, oh, now the divorce is final. And so through all those stages, we experience different things. So with the separation, of course, that's a tearing apart of the family. And so my goal was always to never use the children as a pawn. Like so that was always my thing. So whenever you wanted to see them, you could see them. There is no schedule. If you say, hey, I'm going to do this today, can I come pick them up? Good, go get them. I never put a stumbling block or a wall up there because I figured I didn't want to be the cause of more division in their relationship with their dad. And I just believe that they were our children. And so it wasn't having access. It was just both of us sharing in our life experience and sharing, giving them additional love. So that was always my goal, and that is still my goal. We do not have a parenting schedule because I just chose that I wasn't going to fight over children. That's nothing to fight over,
I can appreciate that. You bring up some very good points. Certainly, our children are not to be used as pawns, as you mentioned. And unfortunately, I think in situations that can happen. And another thing I think that you said was important, which I think would benefit, our listening audience and also us. It was a shared experience. And you wanted to consider everybody's feelings. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure someone that listens to your story may be able to benefit from that and understand that it's about the children and not about the adults and their situation. So thank you for sharing that. That's very important. So thank you very much.
Can I add a little bit more? Also because my children were older, and so they had a voice for themselves.
Sure.
And there's always an issue where it's like, a parent is in between and they may be telling the children one thing and saying something else. And I just didn't want that for them because they were already going through enough. And so I tried to make the process as smooth as possible. Even when him and I weren't in agreement, it was never holding the kids. I never did that. And I still don't to this day because they were grieving, they're grieving their parents' relationship. And so I didn't want to put more grief or more pain on them. So that's how I did it. Yeah.
I think that's what you explained, and I understand how that would be important to you. So again, thank you. And what about you, Mikhail? I know that you mentioned in your introduction that you said that your son is your pride and joy. So certainly, what has your co-parenting experience been like for you?
So I'll just start here. I was 25 when my son was born. So I was fairly, in my mid-20s, still needing that cultivation, that growing to do. So I realized that I needed to mature then, because it was at times where I was, still trying to go to happy hours, knowing that, I had these obligations at home. And, unfortunately, things didn't work out with me and his mother and I early on. But, we came to that agreement that, everything would be about him. Having that maturity level of communicating with one another, and actually, putting our differences aside for him. So just, making sure that we put him first was the main thing. And then actually, as we're growing older, things got a little bit better, but at least, keeping that honest and transparency up front is very important with that communication. Granted, he's 4 years old, he's very young, he's going to have those questions, later in life, I'm sure, but, we're at a place where we can say that we're going to sit him down together, have that conversation with him together, and do a lot of things together rather than, my dad said or my mother said. We have that collective to come together to, raising him together. So at least we have those motions in place.
Sure. And it sounds like even with your co-parenting, with your 4-year-old son, that you still want to show to him some cohesiveness between you and his mom. So that's good. I appreciate that as well. So certainly, if we can get Mike involved, as we have heard from both you, Mikhail, and Aletha. So Mike, if you don't mind, if you can kind of share with us, some things about co-parenting that you find that work for parents, or maybe not work as well for parents? And then certainly, if you don't mind sharing some insight as to how we can overcome these obstacles as you have seen in maybe people that you work with.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you again for the opportunity. So, as being on the panel as a licensed clinical social worker, I want to just be very clear that this is just some insight and some perspective. So, the panelists are certainly the experts as far as their lives are concerned, as far as their situations are concerned with regards to navigating the ins and outs, but just being able to offer some just very practical things that maybe will help you along the way. One of the things that I do want to point out is I see some really good strengths with both of you all. With that being said, both of you guys just really being very mindful of the experience, being mindful of what you want to model and what you want to convey, because quite honestly, it's not always what you say, it's really what your behavior says, in a lot of different ways. So already having that mindset of wanting to be able to certainly work together, or going into it with the spirit of working on what's in the best interest as far as the children are concerned. One of the things that I think that's also helpful is, while you may not necessarily want to be on a schedule, I think it's important to have a schedule, because quite honestly, as adults, you guys should be able to plan a life, quite honestly, as far as co-parenting is concerned, and being able to navigate some things that you would necessarily need to be able to do outside of having that little one, or, in the case of the other young lady, with regards to the teenagers as well. So as far as the parenting perspectives, there's some tasks that you have to take care of, outside of the presence as far as the kids are concerned. So being able to have some sort of schedule, I think is helpful. And it's also helpful for the children as well too. They need to know what to expect, what to look forward to. It also eases the anxiety, as well. And then being able to just model for your partner, your parenting partner, in terms of what it is that you want to convey to the children as well too. So where you guys may have the best intention in mind in terms of, again, what you want to convey, being able to model that as well too, I think is what's going to be, helpful. What hasn't worked is, very high conflict, relations, just having a lot of conflict, that's going on. And what can you do in terms of being able to mediate that conflict? I think the biggest piece is being able to manage your expectations, right? So if there is some level of expectation that you're always going to be in cooperation, or you're going to always be in agreement, that's probably not going to be very realistic, But in the same context, though, I think it is helpful to remember, what values you guys agree on, what traditions you agree on, what interests, you guys have as far as the children are concerned, and being able to partner as far as that's concerned.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, Mike. You gave a lot of good information, just even as a general thought or general practicality. I think a few things that you said, I would like to commend Mikhail and Aletha, because they did exemplify some strengths that you mentioned. And certainly Mikhail mentioned the cohesiveness. And of course, they both are equally concerned about their children and their mental capacity, and, what it takes to be in a relationship, at least a healthy relationship, with the other parent. So if you don't mind, as we are moving along in this topic, please do interject and offer your general insight or your professional insight, whatever you want to call it.
Fantastic. Okay.
We can always use it. So certainly I appreciate it. And Aletha, if you don't mind, I would like to go back to you and kind of piggyback off one of the things that Mike mentioned. He mentioned something like you don't want to be in high conflict. And then of course he mentioned that you want to manage the expectations. And then also he mentioned that you want to ease anxiety, which kind of brings us to, one of the other things that we want to talk with you all about. And that is, what has co-parenting been like since COVID? I would imagine because you are living in two different households with the other parent, there may or may not be some sense of anxiety for you and or the children, as you may find that you're going from dad to mom or mom to dad. So what has that been like? Have you experienced any anxiety when it comes to that as it is related to your co-parenting with the other person?
Me, no, I haven't. Um, because I don't make it a problem. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just don't make it a problem. Like, I just feel like, okay, well, you can't see them today and today, but you can see them this day. And so I think our situation is so unique. And I totally hear what Dr. Evans said. And I wish I could have a schedule. I really,
Yeah, no, I get
I
the real
really
world.
wish I could.
I
But
get the real world.
Right, but I think the blessing is because the nature of his job, he's always on call. And so that's why I purposely did that. But another reason was because my children are older. I'm
Right.
like, if I want to go somewhere, deuces. Y'all know how to cook, y'all know how to clean. Y'all. So I think I'm in a different situation than Mikhail because he has a 4-year-old, so he
Right.
really has to have that schedule.
Right.
But for older kids, I'm just like,
So
you need
I
something.
think I have great appreciation for you, Aletha, because you did say that your children, if I heard you right, your oldest children are at least 19.
Yeah.
And-
So the 23-year-old is away at college. The
Okay.
19-year-old is in school, in college, but she's like the guiding force when I'm not there. So she's like, no, mommy said this and that. So, and this is like the blessing for me. And I will say, my children, I trained them when they were little. So as they got older, it became easier and easier for me to step back. And so when it came to COVID, we just kind of kept doing the same thing we were doing. The only thing was because, like I said, their dad is in a position where he's always exposed to the community. He's always on call. It was just, you need to wear a mask. You know what I mean? When you're riding with your dad, wear a mask. If you come here to get them, you need a mask, things like that. But I tried to make sure I didn't let that be a barrier. It was a challenge, but tried to make sure it was a smooth transition for everyone. But I know for sometimes he felt some kind of way because he felt like he was missing more time, but I feel like he wasn't. So I don't know. I guess it's just perception. You know what I mean? So everyone has a different perception. And so from my perception, I felt like I didn't put any extra barriers in place except for please wear a mask.
Sure.
What's interesting, if I could just interject for a second, it sounds like you're right. You didn't put a barrier in place. It sounds like you put a boundary in place, which are boundaries are actually very important, as far as just relationships are concerned, just in general. It keeps everyone safe, it helps individuals to manage their expectations, right? So you didn't say no, but you said, however, in order for this to happen, this is my expectation. And that's the expectation that was communicated. So that's usually very helpful in facilitating, a relationship where you have to come together.
That's good. I appreciate that. What about you, Mikhail? Did you have to change any expectation or set any boundaries or change anything that you may or may not have changed during COVID or while it has been COVID?
Yeah, so early on, I should have mentioned this about the scheduling. So we are on a schedule. So it's a 1 week off, 1 week on. So 1 week he's with me, the next week he's with his mother, and so forth. So and actually she only lives about 10 minutes away. So it's not anything too strenuous. And we're very flexible again as parents in cultivating his growth. If she has a conference call that, she kind of needs that piece, she may ask me a day, Mikhail, hey, will you be able to, keep Carter this day or, for these 2 days? Or even if we need to switch out weeks and vice versa, if I have work on the other line, we're very communicative when it comes to that and being upfront about work and our schedules. So we do try to keep that schedule, that routine for him. Because children do need routine. You know, and during the weeks that I do have him, you know, I try to make sure that I'm spending time with him. Throughout COVID, it has been hard, you know, balancing work and a 4-year-old. Um, but he's a very bright kid. You know, he's understanding, you know, sometimes he'll say, "Daddy, are you working today?" You know, Saturday comes and he's like, "Daddy, do you have to work today?" I'm like, "Nope, I don't have to work today." And he's so excited, you know, I don't have to work. Um, but we actually did do a pod service. So with the pod, for his schooling, we hired a facilitator with 2 other parents. So it's 3 kids, including him. So we hired a facilitator to teach the kids the virtual program. So we would take him to this pod from 8:30 to 12 every day, Monday through Friday. And, you know, we're paying the facilitator for those hours. So, you know, it's dipping into our budget a little bit, but it's an investment for our child, especially through this COVID time. So, you know, we were able to do that. Unfortunately, the first of the year, the facilitator, she's pregnant now, and she's also taking another job. So now we're at square root one, that we're gonna have to, you know, find a new facilitator, and kind of find that whole balance again. But now it's going on week 2, and he's been at home with us. So I've been having to like schedule that, you know, that time to you know, making him do some work in a little workbook. He doesn't mind doing homework, but it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. But for the most part, you know, it's under control. You know, that flexibility for us is key. So just being open and honest about that. And again, it takes a village to raise a child, and I will have to commend my family, her family. You know, they're definitely helping hands for us too. So.
Right. And you know what, I think that you that's kind of a segue to where I wanted to go next. And then of course, I'll turn it back over to Renee for you know, for additional conversation. But it sounds like that you it was necessary, not just during COVID, but just throughout, as you are on this co-parenting journey. And this is also for Aletha as well, that you had to make some adjustments, not just for COVID, but the adjustments that you had to make once you understood that this would be a co-parenting situation. Would you say that the adjustments, what was the biggest adjustment that you had to make? I mean, aside from the obvious, trying to help them understand your mommy, you're with mommy here, you're with daddy here, or, you know, vice versa, because it sounds like, again, you still have the same ideas for your children. You still have the same interests for your children. And of course, as Mike has mentioned, that is totally something that you want to keep in the forefront. But what was the biggest adjustment that you had to make that was not necessarily hard for the kid, for Carter necessarily, but also for you as the adult? If you don't mind, can you give us a little bit of background of what that experience may have been like for you?
Yeah, it's to me. Yes. So I would say maybe you know, when it comes to setting those boundaries, I'll even, you know, bring up dating. You know, especially throughout the past year, it's been a bit of a challenge in a sense, but you know, we agreed that if we did, you know, start dating, or, you know, if we have someone that we're getting serious with, then we would, you know, introduce them to each other before, you know, they meet Carter, because, you know, they're going to be around our son. Is just, you know, even safety or just feeling comfortable who's around our child.
That's a big deal.
And so, yeah. And so, you know, we keep, again, honest, and transparency is upfront with us. You know, this past year, you know, with her significant other, I was able to meet, and as well, she was able to meet my significant other. And, you know, it was no issues there. It was, you know, very open. In the back of my mind, I'm not gonna lie, at first, I thought that was gonna be a challenge. I thought it was, you know, I was gonna feel away, but, or even, you know, with her, but it wasn't that, you know, big of a deal. Honestly, just being, you know, transparent. Again, it all comes down to that communication.
That's
If I
good.
could just
And that's
even,
a big deal. Mike, you have some insight on that?
Okay. Yeah, because I just wanted to interject because I just think that's a very important or integral piece.
Sure.
So maybe being able to facilitate another conversation, if you haven't already, Mikhail, is not allowing this individual that she dates to rob you of being the first. Right.
Mhm.
So what I mean by that, as far as
Say
just
that
from
again, Mike. You said that so eloquently. I think we need to hear it again.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So maybe being able to facilitate the conversation with, with the mother of your child's significant other, to be able to not allow the individual to rob you of being the first, right? So, so what that means is, if it comes down to mastering shoe tying, so if dad wants to teach his son how to shoe tie, right? So what's very I think could be very hurtful or allow you to feel kind of away, is when Carter comes over and says, "Hey, Mr. Rob taught me how to tie my shoes."
Yeah.
While that might be important, as far as reinforcement is concerned, and while they may practice, I think the discussion should be, hey, I would like to take the lead, and these are the things that I would like to take the lead on, especially when it comes to rites of passage, kinds of things, because allowing you the opportunity to be his dad, So, Mr. Rob or whoever can reinforce all of those things, but dad takes the lead in being able to facilitate that piece. So I think that's one of the things that would be helpful in terms of being upfront, because I think that'll help you from feeling that kind of way.
Yeah, and I like to actually piggyback off of that and share an experience where that did come into play. So it was a situation where I think it was a swim class of Carter's. And, his mother voiced and said that, she for a significant other to come along. And this did make me feel away. I felt that he didn't need to be there. My question was why, you're not married to this person. And I may have came off a little bit hostile at the time, but the way I did try to voice it was, I don't think he needs to be there. I want this moment with my son. And so, she was very understanding of that. But for her to bring it up in the first place was my issue, I think, for her not to understand that, this is my moment. So we haven't had any other situations like that, fortunately. But, again, meeting this person, I felt comfortable with him being around my son. And he gives me the respect of allowing those moments for me to be had with my son.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah. So now, and being able to get the perspective now, because we know, we don't want to rush the process, but we know that Carter's going to be 8. We know that Carter's going to start to ride a bike. We know that he's going to start to drive. We know. So being able to pinpoint those milestones, and I think it's up to us to be able to communicate what's important to us, to that significant other. So being able to already get ahead of that in terms of what you want that to look like as far as the vision is.
Good. And I am sure, certainly with the experience that what we've just talked about, that is such a big deal, because as we're trying to help our children adjust to this very different situation, we're also trying to get adjusted. And so, Mike, the way that you put it, I love the way that you said, make sure that he understands that you are to be the first. Because those things are going to happen. And certainly you want to be mindful, although there is someone else, that, there are certain moments in his life that you want to be a part of just by relationship. So I certainly appreciate you offering that. And thank you for sharing that bit of your story with us as well, Mikhail. I am certainly sure we are going to help somebody. So.
Yes, absolutely.
So I know for you, Aletha, it's a little different because, your kids are such a wide range in age. You have a little bit more flexibility. So maybe the adjustments that it took for you when you and your the father of the children were no longer a unit in one, but you became co-parents. What was the biggest adjustment for you, if any at all? Did you find that you had to adjust to anything that may have been, really a difficult place that you really had to get used to because of the co-parenting situation?
I would say yes, but a backstory is I've always had a relationship with the children. And so their dad has always been gone, busy here, there. So I've always had all those experiences. Like you're saying, all these firsts, I've had all those firsts, like teaching the boys how to tie a tie, how to tie their laces, how to use the potty. These are all things that I've done. And so I didn't feel, and maybe, so now when I'm hearing Mikhail talk, I'm like, well, maybe I need to get this. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I've always been doing it. So when someone else wants to show my children how to do something, I don't feel any kind of way about it because I'm viewing it from my perspective. Like, oh, yeah, good, help them. Yeah, show them how to do that. But I'm not viewing it from his perspective. And so sometimes he'll get upset with me. And I'm like, well, what? I don't even understand. What do you mean? Because I'm not hearing his perspective and because I've done it. Even through the separation and the divorce, I have always done everything from birth all the way up to my 23, 19, 16, 14. I've always done it all. So he doesn't have a real relationship with them. So he's trying to build it now. And so I know I have to be mindful. And so the challenge for me has been to check my emotions, check my emotions. So I always have to go, okay, wait, can I call you back? Can I answer you tomorrow? Can I? Because if not, then I'm going to filter it through my vision, which is, yes, please do that because I've been doing this all this time. Go ahead and teach them how to drive. I don't go ask your uncle, ask your cousin, so because that's been my village. So whenever I've needed something, all these 22, 23 plus years, I've always asked someone in my village to help. So I never thought about a first for him. But in addition, he never complained about it before until we were separated and divorced. So that makes the challenge. So I have to consider what he's saying, but I also have to make sure he's not trying to manipulate the situation because of the separation and because of the divorce. You know what I mean? So sometimes he'll say things and I'm like, is that true? I don't recall that. I remember, so I have to do that sometimes. But I think the main thing is checking my emotions and not taking things personal and trying to filter it through him. So now when Mikhail said that, that really clicked everything together for me. Because like I said, all this time, I've just done it. It wasn't because someone had to do it, right? You have two parents. If one parent is not doing something, someone has to do it. My sons cannot sit on the toilet. They need to stand up. You understand what I'm saying? So who's going to teach them that? I had to do it, right?
Yeah.
They have to ride a bike. Who's going to teach them? I am. My son wanted to play basketball. He was trying to shoot his free throws. You're not there. I have to do it. So that's the way. That's why when I say, so it's like totally different. You know what I mean? Like it's such a different scale when you listen to Mikhail when he has a 4-year-old and me as a teenager. And I'm like, wow, that's so nice that they could co-parent that well.
You know what? I think what's important here is we're not just helping someone. I think we're helping each other.
Yes. So like I said, I've done it all my life. So I don't even know how not to do it. You know what I mean? I don't know how not to, because I've done it all my life. And he's just been wherever. So I've done it. So I couldn't let the children fall because there's no one else. That's my responsibility. So I just jumped in and did it. So now when you're saying, don't take them from the first, I'm like, well, gosh, she missed a whole lot of first. So how do you recover that? How do you recover all of that? I don't know.
Yeah, if I could just jump in and say this. First of all, I need to say shout out to Black women, because number one, y'all just get it done, and sometimes you just can't wait around you got to get it done, which I completely understand. The other piece is that sometimes, I'm just speaking in general, and for some situations, as far as, just as far as men are concerned, sometimes we don't know how to be intentional, and because we, in some ways, don't know how to be intentional because we're not socialized to be intentional. In some ways, we fall behind, we become very overwhelmed, so we don't know where to start. So our default is to do nothing,
Yeah.
So when maybe in his own way, he may have said, hey, I want to take the kids fishing, right? And then you, for 3 weeks, heard him say, I'm going to take the kids fishing. And then he hasn't taken the kids fishing. So you're like, okay, you know what? I'm taking them fishing and they're not doing it anymore, And then, oftentimes for men, sometimes we begin to feel, a way about that, as opposed to just being able to, be able to communicate, And in that communication, sometimes it really is, what I would try to socialize, couples to do is, if you're going to put something out there, give an update. So, be able to talk about something and then just talk about where you're at with it, because it could be in your mind, it could be where it is, but it's not happening. And sometimes we just have really good intentions, but the follow through isn't the way that it needs to be, because again, shout out to Black women, because they're used to getting it done. And again, I'm not saying that Black men don't get it done. What I am saying is that, women are socialized differently, as far as men is concerned. And it's not necessarily, it's not an excuse, I think it's just sometimes it's just a reality, quite honestly. But I think it is up to us as men to be able to communicate our needs, our desires, and our wants, in a way where we can be heard and not get into patterns of just shutting down when things don't happen the way that we think that they should happen.
Sure. Can I add also, I think also for their dad, he didn't see it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So he didn't see how that's supposed to look. What he saw was work, 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 provide, 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 work, 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 provide, provide, provide. And then every now and again, when there's a family function, I'm going to come for the family function and we're going to show up like we've all been doing it all together. But then I go back to work, 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 provide, provide, provide. And I think that has been my goal for my sons, to not just see work, work, work and provide, provide, provide. And so I try to make sure that they're around men in my family that do it differently. And then me and my children have such a great conversation. We talk a lot. So we're very open with our conversation. And so as they're getting older, they're noticing more things. And so they'll say, well, Mom, Dad works a lot. And I say, yeah, he does. I said, what do you think about that? You know what I mean? I want to know, what do you think? And when they talk to me about it, I said, so what are your plans going to be? Do you think you like that? Because they'll sometimes say, the dad is always working, and then sometimes he only sees us for a little bit. I said, well, how does that make you feel? I said, so what can you do differently? And when I have my son, or when I have so work on that plan. You know what I mean? But like I said, I try to keep them around men that are like my brother. He's like my ace. I always be like, well, what did Uncle Willie do? What do you think he's doing? Yeah.
I think that's good, Alisa. I think that's a good practice that you implement, because as we are maneuvering or managing the co-parenting for whatever that looks like for our family unit, I think one of the elements that we also must consider is, who in our family, what does our village look like that can contribute to our co-parenting? Because if there is a situation where, as you just have explained, that Dad wasn't there, so everything that needed to be done, I pretty much took care of it. And so for a lot of it, the adjustment meant for me is having to get used to where he didn't partake so much before, he wants to, partake a little bit more. And so that was the adjustment for you. But, as we think about the entire unit, and Mikhail, I think you mentioned it as well, we have to consider, our village, our support, and what that looks like as it relates to our co-parenting, because that is a great element that we cannot leave out as well, because a lot of times, especially when you have children as young as Carter, or if you have children that are growing up and Dad is working a lot, we have to rely on the rest of the family just to kind of make it work. And so that becomes a part of our co-parenting unit. So Mikhail, what would you say that looked like for you as it related to your co-parenting experience and your family, your entire family village or your entire family unit?
Yeah, so yeah, my family unit, at least for me, so I'm from the South, or I consider Southern Virginia the South.
Yeah.
Grew up in Virginia. So my family is very close-knit anyway. So they're always there to pick up any slack. We're glue, nothing's gonna break us apart. We're there for each other. I could call my mom right now and say, Carter needs something, or do you want to come pick him up? She will gladly drive 4 hours to come pick up her grandson. But yes, my mom, she's my rock. An outstanding Black woman that she raised me single-handedly, her doing the duties of my father. As my father, he did have certain aspects of my life. He wasn't there all the time, but my mother, she stepped up and she provided. So me seeing that, and Aletha, as you said, I noticed that my father wasn't there all the time. So for me, I made it a fact that Carter wasn't gonna, without a doubt, be skeptical of my presence. I'm gonna always be there no matter what. And we're gonna be like this. And so just with his growth, I'm always gonna be there. It's no doubt in his mind, no doubt in my mind. Anything that he needs, I will be there. But for my family though, it's yes, anything that I need, they're there. At times Carter will go and spend a week, in the country, or 2 weeks, especially in the summertime. So, I can't wait till he gets older. He can spend the whole summer. So
All kids need the country.
Right, the country. It's the country. But yes.
So definitely, you've also expressed, that unit is such an intricate part to make it all come together. So I think it's great with both of you that you have that cohesiveness, not just with the co-parent or the other person or the father or the mother, but you also have it as a family unit. So that offers a lot of support for your children, which I think is also important. And Mike, you touched a little bit when you mentioned, it's the way that we're socialized sometimes. And so that, Mikhail and Aletha, both of you mentioned that the things that you notice in your own lives, you can't, well, these are my words, you kind of worked hard to make sure that that's not what your children notice about you.
Absolutely.
So I think that's, and then you reinforce that with your family unit or your family village. So thank you all again for sharing and being so open with us. We certainly appreciate it. So Mike, if you don't mind, can you elaborate a little bit or give us some additional insight as to what that family village or that family unit looks like as it relates to co-parenting, not just isolated to the other parent, but also the family itself?
Sure, absolutely. I think one of the things that's very important is not just having formal supports, but also very informal supports, right? So family is the individuals that we may not necessarily be able to choose, but the individuals that we're tied to, but we can certainly go out and choose those informal supports, right? And we can do that based upon, different aspects as far as our kids are concerned. So for example, I'll just use my own life, as an example, with my kid, because I'm in a co-parenting, relationship as well, too, which is actually, pretty healthy. But my neighbor next door is always tinkering around with something. So he's always tinkering around with an engine. He's always tinkering around with the air conditioner. He's always tinkering around with something. And I got to tell you that I was a social worker for a reason. So those aren't necessarily my friends, right? But what I'm very intentional about is allowing my son to go over and just say, hey, Mr. Ross, what are you doing? What are you working on? So, and then he begins to kind of show him, the mechanics, and things of that nature. And I actually begin to learn something, as well, too, as far as that process is concerned. So not being so protective, that we can't allow our kids to get some wings and be able to learn some things from other people, as well too. So, excuse me, those units are important. The other piece is that sometimes our kids are going to see what wrong looks like. And as they see what wrong looks like, that is a teachable moment, or that begins to give us an opportunity to be able to look at some corrective behavior, right? So either we're going to parent in one of two ways. We're either going to parent the way that we were parented, or we're going to parent the exact opposite of the way that we were parented, right? So with those, so again, just with those aspects, being able to point those, things out and being able to make as much as you can a lesson, So what I'm not hearing, but what I think will be helpful, to a lot of individuals, especially as far as high conflict relationships, are concerned, there are so many different ways of being able to communicate with our children. So I'm a big advocate for what's called digital diaries. And basically the concept that I work with a lot of, dads groups and men's groups, in the past, where in high conflict relationships, they may not have had as much access to their children as they would like. So what I've recommended that individuals do is just open an email account and, with the password, and just email that account, or make what's called like a digital diary with pictures, with statements, with things that you want to, things that you want your kid to know. For me, I see my kid, pretty regular, probably about, 4, 5, 6 times a week, but I don't really see him as much as I would like to because I'm not in the home with him every day. So I just opened a digital diary for him. So essentially I started when he was 9. And basically I opened an email account, and I just email that account anytime I'm thinking about him, anytime it's something I want him to know. So he will always know that he is loved with a timestamp. He will always know that he's thought about with a timestamp. And at some point, maybe when he's, 16, 17, 18, or when he's an adult, I'm just going to give him the password and just let him go through and read it.
Nice.
Yeah. So, you can do it by year, you can do it, but so there's, a number of ways that, that essentially that you could really begin to, just kind of communicate, as well, especially, with the high conflict. The other piece is find ways to say yes. If you can say yes, just say yes. It just makes the parenting relationship just so much easier, and being able to do that. It doesn't mean that you have to bend so much that you're losing yourself, So of course you want to stick to your values, your integrity, the things that are important, to you. But if it is a matter of, 2 hours versus 4 hours, Monday versus Friday, Thursday versus Wednesday, if there's some things that's within your power, I think it's just much easier to be able to say yes.
Okay, so it sounds like it, you still have those defining boundaries, but whenever you can offer some flexibility, just offer some flexibility is what it sounds like you're saying. So we are fast approaching our hour, and we certainly appreciate your time that you have spent with us. Can we spend a couple of minutes where Aletha, Mikhail, and also you, Mike, if you can share with us how people can get in contact with you, if you have anything exciting happening in your lives, if you want to share that with people, sure, I would ask that you take a couple of minutes and do that, and then certainly we'll go ahead and close out from there.
All right, well, I'll start first. Well, because I was going through this divorce separation process for 2 years, I started a page on Facebook called In Between Married and Single, which I've now changed to After This. So with that, In Between Married and Single, I have live videos of me navigating through it, talking about some of the things that I'm experiencing. I also have my children on one session where they talk about how the experience is going for them, how we're their relationship with their dad. So it's really cool. And then things that I've learned along the way, just trying to support other people, because I felt like that separation, divorce part where your relationship is real rocky, no one really talks about it. Everyone's like, shh, don't, but you can tell people are going through it, but no one really talks about it in a way that's supportive and is candid. And so I did the In Between Married and Single, talking about my journey. And so now we've changed it to After This, because now I'm at the After This stage. And that's on Facebook, sorry. So you can find it on Facebook. All my videos on Facebook. So if you look it up, it's that After This. And then just on Facebook, Aletha Fernandez, Instagram, Aletha Fernandez. I am Aletha, I'm sorry, on Instagram. But that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm excited about it.
Thank you. We're excited for you, and certainly wish you well with that project. What about you, Mikhail? What's exciting going? What do you have exciting for us if you want to share?
Yeah, I would just say people can find me on Facebook or Instagram, Mikhail Dickerson. Instagram Ace Boogie 06. And yeah, I mean, I'm a part of a Black Fathers group on Facebook. Black Fathers, I encourage you to join. I will also say this, Black men, therapy is important. I've started therapy maybe 3 years ago. 2020, I definitely was on more of a schedule throughout the pandemic and whatnot, but definitely therapy has helped me get this far. So I will definitely commend, going to therapy and mental health for Black men and Black women as well. So I definitely say, if you haven't, give it a try, just give it a try.
Yes. Absolutely. And before Mike speaks again, Mikhail, I know you're being a little bashful, but I do want you to, because I follow you obviously on Facebook and Instagram, and I just want you to share 2 things with the group. One about Carter's experience with the astronaut, and then 2 about your vision board that you all just completed together.
Yeah, so again, Carter, so just real quick, I guess I won't be bashful right now since Renee just called me out. But Carter, at 6 months old, we had got him into modeling. So Carter was very just exuberant in front of the camera. So we got him into modeling. He was able to get a couple gigs. So he's done Gap, he's done Pampers, he's done a few little gigs. But fast forward. About 3 weeks ago, we, with the school, Apple Tree in DC, they were awarded the opportunity with Noggin and NASA to pick a student, whoever submitted the video, who they picked at the school. Carter was one of 2 kids that was picked. I'm sorry, he was one of many kids that was picked to ask a question to an astronaut, a real astronaut at NASA. And they were able to broadcast it. It was a link. I still have it up, and it's on my Facebook page as well. But he asked the astronauts, how long does it take to get to outer space? And they answered him, and they said it's about 8 minutes. We do have the video up. I can more than welcome and share it with you, Renee, for you guys to see. But yeah, I can't. He's so bright. I love him to death. He's something else though. He is something else. But yes, he's very outgoing, a very outgoing child that we're very, very blessed to have.
Thank you for sharing that. And don't be so bashful. If he's great, let's know he's
kids. Right.
And Mark, if you don't mind, can you tell us how people can find you? If you have anything that you want to share with us, please do.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I guess I would be called old school because I'm going to give you guys an email address. So probably the best way to reach me is via email. Evans, EVANS, LCSW @gmail.com. My Facebook's boring. My Instagram's boring. It's mindless stuff that's away from the work, but I promise my email is lit. So, but at any rate, I think that was also a great plug for for therapy as well too. I just cannot impress upon it enough. Not just because I'm a therapist, but it's just the importance of being able to have that connectivity, and certainly to have someone who maintains your confidentiality. Like they can't even tell it, even if they wanted to. So I think that becomes a very fantastic plug. I am a social worker with the federal government, but I do take on, some private cases and then also do some workshops, as well too, depending on the need. My passions are around fatherhood and the African-American experience, as well. And then also with parenting, as a key component as well too, that I really, really, enjoy working with, with children and families, which I don't get a lot of time to do as much because I work primarily with adults, now. Sure. But but you can keep up with me on email, maybe MySpace.
But as long as people can find you, we still know how to find you. So it's
absolutely. Absolutely, you definitely can.
I'll go ahead and say that we appreciate you all being here, and certainly we don't take for granted your time. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences. As I mentioned, I'm sure you're going to help not just us, but other people that may hear your story and give someone some hope. And they can get through the challenges that they may see themselves in just by listening to your stories and then listening to the insight from a clinical social worker. So we appreciate all of you, and thank you so much for being here. So I'll go ahead and say that while in the journey of parenting, it's not always perfect. It's not always perfect, but it is purposed.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll turn it back over to you, Renee.
Thank you for joining Women Living Intentionally. We really appreciate you joining us tonight. For our viewers, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Women of 4D. Facebook, follow us, Women of 4D. Instagram, women_of_4D. And also visit our website, www.womenof4d.org. Thank you. Have a good evening.